I made a pixel art poster for Markiplier's horror movie Iron Lung. I really enjoyed this movie and all the artistry behind it, so today I decided to make a little art of my own. Now there are three main visual components to Iron Lung, those being the submarine that the main character is trapped in for the duration of the game/film, the big fish monster, which is canonically referred to as the eel in the movie version, and of course the big giant massive lake of blood. I think we can work with that. So I'm starting off with this drawing in a different style to what I often do. I'm usually doing pixel art in a much lower resolution. I'll do like character sprites in 16 by 16 pixels. And when I do those, I'm doing a lot more of, I guess what you call like counting out the pixels, you know? If I want something to be 8 pixels over, I'll count out 8 pixels. Since I knew that this piece was going to end up being a much larger pixel size in total, I went ahead and gave myself a much larger starting canvas than I normally do, and then what I do from there is I just kind of draw it out with the symmetry tool, more like what I would do with like a pencil and paper, where you know, I'm not really doing any pixel counting. I'm not even really trying to make sure that my edges are like perfectly straight or perfectly a diagonal. What I'm going for here is a much more organic painted look. That's what I'm hoping my end product will be. And so, you know, other than, you know, using the symmetry tool and having my pixel grid on, which I also don't typically do, those are pretty much the only tools I'm using for a high amount of precision here. Other than that, I'm just kind of putting pixels down on a screen, you know, where I see lighter or darker, you know, I'll go in with that color. And I'm spending a lot of time here trying to focus on the shape and using references from the movie to try to make sure my silhouette is right and the kind of landmarks of this like skeletal face and these teeth are lining up right for me. So yeah, I'm going back and forth here between doing the line work on the outside and trying to make sure that the silhouette and shape is what I want, and then building up some of those tones going from darker to lighter. I start out by doing, you know, a solid fill shapes, and then I bring out a little bit of dithering here and there to, you know, try to smooth out that gradient and reduce some of those hard edges. And this whole time I'm trying to decide how many tones I want between full black and fully saturated red, and how many shades of darker red I want in this piece. I know right from the start that I don't really want any other colors, and I want it to be fairly simplistic. I don't want a lot of different halftones, just kind of barely enough to get it to where I need to be. And we kind of sped through that a little bit, but I mean that's pretty much the fish all done. So once I'm kind of happy with the way that the fish's face looks, I move on to the submarine here. And for the submarine, I'm using again instead of photo references from the movie like I did for the fish, I'm using photo references from the game. To try to get this to look as accurate as possible. And already starting off with the perspective, it's pretty different than the exact perspective in the screenshots that I'm using. But I'm totally fine with that, and I'm actually kind of wanting to lean in a little bit to the way that mine is different from the screenshots that I have. I obviously want this to be an accurate representation of Iron Lung, but I want it to have a little bit of my own individual flair, and, you know, I don't want it to be a one-to-one copy of art that other people have already made. I want it to be, you know, uniquely my own when it's done. And so far, I'm pretty happy with how this is coming along. You know, it's actually easier having to do the submarine at this stage in the art piece, because with that fish monster, I had to, you know, figure out how many colors I wanted, how many halftones between black and red, make sure that I wanted, you know, it to be a gradient from black and red. And for all of these pixels that I'm putting in right now, I'm just picking from the color palette that I already have from the first half of the piece. And it's surprising how much faster it makes it go along, because I'm not having to think about how many colors to use, or, you know, if it's too much, if it's too little. You know, when I'm trying to get a gradient from fully saturated red to full black, you know, I'm just kind of picking out what color to use. I'm not trying to, you know, invent a color or think about if it's the right color or not. And that really frees up my mind to really think about like the shape and the perspective and, you know, trying to get the lighting just right. I really wanted that black outline, but as you can see, I decided to go ahead and have some of that full red on the outside to really give some dramatic lighting on the left and right edges and leave the middle a little bit dark. And by this time, once I've got the, you know, the face of the fish and the submarine in, I'm noticing that the dark background that I wanted everything to fade into is just a little too empty, and it doesn't have a lot. So I'm adding kind of this bubble texture here. It's nothing too fancy. I want it intentionally simple so that it doesn't take away from, you know, the focal piece. And then I'm also brightening up the main colors in the submarine, because now that I have those bubbles in, the details of the submarine are just kind of blurring into the background and getting a little too muddy for my liking. So I brighten up the colors, and then I kind of go over it a little bit to you know, fix some of the color issues I had, and that's looking a lot better to me. Now I can see the distinct face of the fish, I can see the silhouette of the submarine, and the bubbles don't take away from that, and I'm really liking how my outlines are. I'm noticing some issues that I had where the face of the fish doesn't quite look like the movie screenshots, and it took me a while to pinpoint what that is. So I'm adding some teeth and making that mouth a little bit more narrow, and as you can see, I changed the eye shape a little bit too. And so at this point, I've got a background that I like. I really like the way that the face of the fish looks, and the submarine looks pretty good. I like the contrast between the organicness of the fish and having a little bit more rigidity in the metal of the submarine. So now we're jumping into the text and everything, and this was my first attempt. I'll spoil it for you a little bit. It was not the final draft. I wanted it to have kind of a vintage or retro horror look, and so I started with those blocks, and I just kind of cut out the letters a little bit. And I was really liking how it was working at the beginning, but by this time, I don't know, it just looks a little messy to me. It doesn't have the artistic flair that I originally wanted, and it just kind of looks unintentional or sloppy, and I really don't want the title to be like the weak point of this piece. So I'm starting all over again with a little bit more precision, and this time, instead of having kind of wavy, organic-looking letters, I'm leaning more toward the submarine side of things, where the metals are a little bit more precise and rigid and metal. And I'm keeping mostly hard edges with the exception of rounding the outsides. I thought that looked kind of submarine-y with the inside being really solid, but just a little bit of roundness to the outside. So I start off with the full saturated red, and I cut out the inside a little bit to give it that nice outline. And then I am going back with that wavy texture that I had in the original, because that was the one point that I really liked on the original text. I played around with a few other ideas, like adding some metal pipes between the letters to connect them so that the letters kind of look like the inside of the submarine. And I did like that idea, but I felt it was just way too distracting, and I didn't know a good way to incorporate it into the piece, so I cut that out. Looking for other finishing details to add, I added a little bit of dithering and a vignette to the outside, fading to black. And then I decided I did want some texture on those letters, so I went back with a few darker pixels and added some bubbling, and then I went in with a little red outline, and that is the piece pretty much right there. To give a sense of how long this took, the raw footage before I sped it up for the time lapse was 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 56 seconds. A lot of the pixel art I've done lately has been smaller pieces, like I said, those little 16 by 16 character sprites, so jumping from that to something like this was a really big difference, but I enjoyed every single second of it. This was a really fun project to do, and I was honestly just so happy to make something Iron Lung related today. I was so happy when the movie came out. I thought it was a really great film. Having a YouTuber make a full feature-length film that made it to theaters and was actually a good quality movie, that's something that is just really big for all creative individuals right now. Whether or not you're a fan of Markiplier or Iron Lung, a project like this was really impossible until now, and now that it's been done once, I'm just so excited to see what other people make and what other people create. So yeah, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for watching, and if you still have a chance to, go see Iron Lung.